Hello and welcome to Talent Acquisition Trends and Strategy. Today we're joined by Rob Whalen. Rob, welcome to the show.
James, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
For sure. Could you share a little bit with us about your background?
Yeah. Background is really accounting is my degree where I graduated from. I graduated from CLU, but accounting was the degree. Serial entrepreneur. This is my fourth company that I've started or founded, and been selling and building high tech, both hardware and software, for the last, holy cow, it's about 27 years now, at least. And started this company, and well, the idea culminated in 2012. We founded it in 2013 as a side project or a side hustle to what we were doing, and then really launched it in 2017. It was with when we raised some capital around it to start scaling it and developing the idea in the market, because it had never been done before. Anyhow.
Yeah. And I think I saw it too for did I see you raised like a $5 million seed round or something? Like,
that was kind of a seed two. It was a seed two round. We raised $3 million in 2017, and then built the company out, and then just raised another $5.4 million. It's been a year ago we raised it, and then have been scaling the business since then. We've been doubling. Actually, we tripled last year. We're doubling this year, and we'll easily double next year, if not triple again.
Damn, that's really impressive.
Yeah. Well, it's a lot of hard work, but as you know, building and starting companies is not for the faint of heart.
No, it's not. You have to be a little bit crazy, the good kind of crazy, hopefully. But
yeah,
you got to be. That's how at least I'll speak for myself. You have to somehow really get enjoyment out of the hard work. For me, it's like I see it as this massive puzzle, and it inspires me. I like trying to solve. And for me personally, I like the scale puzzle. I like trying to figure out how do we create a ton of value in the market and actually create something that can scale and continuously add more value. And that to me is the hardest part, right? Like getting technical into a solution to me is a little easier than figuring out how do we create a lot more value in the market and make it work around specific unit economics that actually scale as well. That's the thing that really inspires me. So,
and to your point, right? You come in the office and there's 10 more problems you have to solve. Some of them personnel, some of them product, some of them just like customers coming to you with ideas. Then you're saying, do we want to build it or do we want to deliver that? Because then that sets us on a whole nother trajectory, possibly. And you don't want to build one-offs. You don't want to do one-offs, because you're looking at that scalability piece that you're talking about.
Yeah, some of the best advice I think it was one of the most influential pieces of advice in the early days of starting my company was from a guy his name's Atai Rosen. And Atai was, I think, like the first VP of sales at a company called SimilarWeb, which was, is incredibly successful, went from like early stage to IPO, probably around 10 years. Kind of the venture capital sweetheart company, raised over probably 100 million. Probably, I think they actually got a good return on that investment. Their investors got a good return. Anyways, Atai, I think, scaled them from like a zero to their first 20 million or 50 million in recurring revenue. And he moved to another company. So I worked with him at a couple different companies, and I met him in person at like a WeWork, and it was so funny. He's basically, in a very passionate way, told me, look, when you working at a startup or a growth company, there's always going to be like 100 problems, right? 100, he called them fires, right?
Oh yeah.
And he was like, there's going to be 100 fires, and like, you have to know which 2 or 3 fires to focus on and just go all in on putting those out, and you just let the rest of them burn. Like, you don't, you have to have the judgment and know, okay, where am I going to put my focus and deal with those things? But you're never going to put them all out. Sometimes you just
No,
have to know, like, okay, I got to delegate. I can't control this. It's not going to go the way I want it to, but it's not going to enable me to grow the business if I dial in on that problem. Right.
I think you do that with your employees too, right? Like you have to hire employees and then you let them do their thing, knowing that they're going to fail and they're not going to do it the way you would have done it. And you got to be okay with that. You just
Yeah.
have to be okay with it and let them figure it out, because if you don't, you just don't have time to do it all.
Right.
You're focused on those, like you said, two or three things that you've got to get done. That are what is it, the point of the arrow or the spear, to get the thing to scale.
Yeah. And I think too, it's like in my case, reminding myself too, it's like, okay, sometimes things happen where it's like, I would have done it differently, but sometimes the way I would have done it differently isn't nearly as good as the way I would have done it. So sometimes it's frustrating because I'm like, oh, why do we, I already learned that lesson. We didn't have to make that mistake. But then other times I'm like, damn, I never would have thought of that idea. So I think it probably, but the hard part is letting go, right? Because you put
You're
your
right.
blood, sweat, and tears and you founded this thing, and then you have to take the step back and realize, like, okay, we have to delegate to the right people in order to actually scale, right?
You
Um,
do. Yeah, no, in the early days, I was the salesperson, so I was out selling, and then we hired a VP of sales, and within about 3 weeks, I realized how much better at it he was than I was, and I was just like, okay, I'm out of this, man. He's so much better, and he's doing so many better things, uh, and so, but now I can go do other things, right? I can
right.
go work on capital raising and productizing some of the things that we're looking at doing.
Yeah, I
But
totally agree, man.
yep. Anyhow,
Well, I guess
so
we had some topics to discuss relevant to like people and talent acquisition. But to be honest, like, one more thing about this. I was talking to uh uh it's like a few months ago. We had like a pretty tough personnel issue, and I had to go consult with I guess an employment lawyer. And his philosophy, obviously he has like a biased perspective because he sees everything through the lens of like employment and this type of like
yep.
labor law and all these types of things. But he said, I was talking about like, okay, we have this one, kind of personnel issue with an ex-employee. And he was like, James, every problem is a personnel problem. Like at the end of the day, it all comes back. So it's kind of funny how he was like, when he was talking about fires, or you're talking about like product roadmap, or you're talking about anything, his philosophy was like, at the end of the day, it all, people is the core business. So all the good things, all the value, and all the fires, like everything comes down to people at the end of the day. So I thought that
Uh,
was an interesting perspective.
well, they are the greatest asset in the company, right? And they're the
Yeah.
ones that actually are helping you take your idea and build it, deliver it, sell it, implement it, and then do support around it.
Right.
And that's not a system, that's people.
Hell yeah.
Um,
It's people. It's all the value, all the challenges, everything in between.
the product is just kind of the glue that they're all working with.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, hey, look, so let's get after it here. I think, we wanted to talk about, basically, I'm not going to try to explain your product. But I think
Yeah.
it before getting into the changing work environment, I think it makes sense to start with what your product does, and then we can kind of get into how that is really relevant to the direction of, how work is changing in the future of work.
Yeah. Yeah. No, no, no. Certainly tell you a little bit about why we're doing it and how it all came about. Um, Roughly everyone accrues paid time off or has paid time off in their compensation. And what we realized early on and this came about because I left Cisco, and then they paid me out all of my paid time off that had been accrued, which was a very large check. And that was kind of that light bulb moment, James, when we said, hey, what if we could have used those dollars when we were working with Cisco to maybe put into our 401k or take our family on a vacation that we may not have been able to afford and have a life experience? Would that have made a difference? And we said, hell yeah, it would. It would make a big difference and Cisco, by the way, is an incredible company. Um, But we realized that there was a lot of dollars not being utilized, that a company's it's sitting on their liability. And so we said, what if we could move those dollars and build flexibility around it so that employees could self-direct a portion of that unused PTO or dollars, because those are dollars, for what we call goods, services, and experiences. And that would actually support them through their transitions in life. Okay. And I can give you some examples. There's the life cycle of an employee that, comes out of college, they start with a company. And in the olden days, you would stay with a company for 10, 15, 20 years. Nowadays, everyone jumps companies, right? And they have a number of jobs throughout their career. And what we look at it is there's the work cycle and then there's the life cycle. And life cycle is your family, okay, your personal, and work cycle is your work. And each one goes through different transitions at different times. And how do you support those transitions within the workforce? And this came really prevalent because we have 5 generations in the workforce. And what a benefit is to me at the age of 55 is different than the benefit for you that's at the age of 31. And your needs, you have a 3-year-old. I have older kids that are now graduated from college, right? They're just different needs. And you may need a benefit to pay down your student loans. Don't know if that's the case or not, but you may.
I dropped out of school, so fortunately I don't have that bill. I got almost charged with out-of-state tuition, and I guess I had taken just enough finance classes to know, like, I don't want to pay that back.
Yeah,
so
but
I dropped out.
No doubt. But maybe it's 529. Maybe you're
Right.
trying to put in 529 for your kid or whatever, right?
Mhm.
But the benefits are different for each generation. And I think what we're trying to solve for is that to match the benefits or build flexible benefits that match each employee where they're at in their life cycle or in their transition cycle. And that's really what PTO Exchange is about. There's roughly $400 billion that gets accrued every year. Roughly about 160 billion of that goes unused, and then 65 billion of it gets wiped off the books as kind of a use it or lose it, or someone caps. And so we're just trying to use those dollars and give people more flexibility around the dollars that are really accrued productivity that they have.
Okay, so that's
PTO Exchange.
Got it. So what is so in terms of, so the way that it works is that I guess the PTO in many cases is accrued. And then if they don't take it, opposed to it kind of like rolling over, they're taking it out of the business. But it sounds like it's not just cash out. It sounds like it's possibly just put into another benefit bucket or something like that. So can you walk us through kind of like the process specifically?
Exactly. So a company accrues that liability, and it goes through the net income statement and sits on the balance sheet as a liability offset by cash. The employee can go in and say, I want to use some of that time. And there's rules, meaning that the employer could say, we only want James to use 40 hours a year on the platform. James, you accrue 120, which is 3 weeks, because we want you to take vacation too, but we'll allow you to use 40 hours a year, and you can put it into your 401k or your HSA, things like that. And those, what we call them plans, are decided by the employer, meaning that the employer says, I don't want people to just cash out their PTO, because PTO is really meant for well-being, de-stressing, disengaging, and cashing out is not really what we want. So if we can say, hey, we'll allow the employee to use those 40 hours of time, and you exchange it for maybe it's hotel and airfare to go use those 2 weeks of vacation that you want to go use, and have an experience that you may not have been able to afford.
I love that. I really do. And You had mentioned before we hit record that you did studies. Was it in-house studies, or I don't know if you hired like a consultancy firm or something like that, but something like you said, 9 out of 10 people would be more likely to stay when people have like flexible benefits, or like the vast, I can't remember the number, but
Yeah,
like,
we did
okay,
a study with Lighthouse Research. So it was a third
okay,
party. We paid them to go out and do a study on our benefit and kind of what people thought about it. And what we found out in return is that 9 out of 10 employees, if they had flexible benefits, something similar to PTO exchange, they would be more likely to stay with that employer.
yeah.
And we thought that was just huge.
Oh, that's so significant. I always found it interesting. So I think Netflix did this at least for some time. I don't know if they currently do it. A couple other, category leading tech companies I think have done this, where they had personalized benefits options, right? So people could, basically pick, okay, you have this bucket allocated to you in cash, or like, cash equivalent. You can invest into things that you want, which overall is a really cool thing, personalized benefits. Apparently, like some issues that would arise would be that some people would buy a ton of stock options, and some people would buy, more healthcare, right? Like different
Yeah.
types of healthcare packages. And then the person who bought the stock is showing up, in the case of like a Netflix, showing up in their Ferrari 5 years later, and not everybody got a Ferrari. So like there's like some kind of like, there's some challenges there, but I think overall, like, obviously people want to be able to pick their benefits packages. And one of the questions that I always had about those programs when you have personalized benefits is, how do you actually deliver on that in a scalable way? Because that to me just seems like such a nightmare to manage as a people function. Like if you have all these people doing individual buckets and all these types of things, but it sounds like it's like you've to some extent like productized this, where it makes it easier for people to kind of pick and choose, and it's not like a manual process that people have to like people just have to do, the people
Right.
team or HR team, right?
Well, what we
So
did is we looked at, okay, so if you could take your PTO, what would you like to do with it? And then we kind of put what we call plans together, like I said. And then the employer is the one who decides, hey, you know what? We're trying to do, we want our employees to put their, do more 401k, right? To be more financial well. And in doing so, we want them to invest in 401k. So they would just turn on 401k, right, piece. And so they would give their employees the ability to take 20 hours and put it into their 401k. And that's what they'd start with. And then they'd say, okay, well, let's do, HSAs for health savings accounts. So for those people that have health savings accounts, you can take those 20 hours and put it into your HSA. And then they could turn on student loan repayment, right? Okay, we want to allow people to take their time and pay down student loans to get out of debt, or pay for tuition because maybe they want to further their education. And this is all turned on or off by the employer as a benefit to the employee. And then the employee has access to it.
how does this integrate with like, damn, I'm blanking on it.
Like a payroll system or an HRIS system?
Yes, or like I was thinking like a JustWorks or TriNet, a PEO. That's what so employer
So,
record, like how does that work?
so for PEOs, they're obviously PEOs are meant for smaller companies. We're a
Right.
PEO ourselves.
I'm kind of being selfish on that question because we use
Yeah,
a PEO.
yep. So we are in talks with almost all the PEOs right now on integrating our product into their platforms. We do currently have integrations into Kronos or UKG payroll system, ADP. We have a lot of Workday clients. But you'll notice that the PEOs are smaller. We've been focused on some of the mid to larger clients.
That makes sense.
We have clients that have 70,000 employees, and we do have some nonprofits that are like 13 that we do a quick integration to their ADP or their paychecks. But yeah, we integrate directly to those payroll systems and or HRIS systems to enable a seamless integration when we move that money from the PTO bank in through the payroll system and then out.
Got it. And just another kind of question I have
Yeah.
is like I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but are there different state requirements from a compliance standpoint that make your job a headache, like to provide this solution in all the different states?
Yes. Yes.
So how much of your
That's
time
a
is
that's a hard yes, James.
oh, that sucks, man. That must be difficult to go through all. So how do you guys manage that? Because that just seems like a compliance nightmare.
Yeah, so I said we started the company in 2013. We spent like 4 years understanding all the laws and regulations around it to build a flexible platform that can, as things change, the platform can change. And not only from a federal level, but also from a state level and a county level. We can make these changes into the policy system, into the back end that allow for compliance. And compliance is a big thing. We're compliant in all 50 states. And so, that's a big thing for our customers, because these are publicly traded companies and big companies. And they need to know that they're going to be compliant. But yes,
Right.
we understand those laws. We understand what's going on in all the states, so that our customers can be compliant.
And I mean, check me on this assumption, but if you're working with publicly traded companies, enterprise, mid-market, they have pretty well established people teams and HR teams. So it sounds like it'd kind of be like a partnership. Like you're obviously, familiar and probably baked in compliance into the product, but also they have people monitoring this from the inside and know how to set this up in such a way that you're not working, again, like we talked about PEOs being for smaller companies, might be a little bit more, I guess potentially like they don't have as large of an internal HR team, but for your primary ideal customer profile, it sounds like, they're going to know their stuff already and they're going to have people that are
Yep.
monitoring this. So
Yeah, agreed. And they do. And so what happens in the sales cycle is obviously we wind up talking to their attorneys. You were talking about the employment attorney earlier, prior to us hitting record here. And we have a number of attorneys that are on, that we have around the country, and they're really good at what they do, but we're also really good and we know a lot about what we do. So we'll have these conversations ourselves. And we're also brought in by our consultants to talk about it. But, you talk about PEOs and, we want to make sure that these smaller clients are compliant, even if they don't know what they're doing. We want to make sure that we're protecting them, that we're doing the right thing by them, because, they're signing up for us. They're trusting us to do it right. And, we don't want to be a fly-by-night solution, even if it's a 25 employee company or 10 employee company. Those things are important to every company.
yeah, I totally agree. Quick question, with your sales cycle or sales process, is it like the majority of I wonder where you consider something like qualified pipeline in terms of like higher likelihood to close? And I'm assuming that the legal stage is probably maybe the longest time in stage or the longest part of your sales process, or like is it like, okay, once legal approves, then it's like real pipeline, that's something that we can close? Like, but I'm just curious how that impacts your sales cycle and how you think about acquiring new clients.
Yeah, I mean, it used to be longer. It used to create more of a timeline for us. It doesn't so much anymore because I think we now have 65 clients signed, and some of them, like I said, they're not small clients. And so when you go close another customer and you have all this history working with very large clients, and both from a security standpoint, technical standpoint, launching standpoint, some of that concern goes away, or shortens the sales cycle. But the other one that I just talked about, outside of compliance or legal, is really security. And because you are touching the payroll system and you're working with their employees, having security and being secure and having the processes in place as an organization is critical. We've been SOC 2 compliant for, I think this is our 5th or 6th year. And now we're SOC 1. We did our SOC 1 this year, which is on the finances. And those things are really important for our larger clients.
Oh, totally agree. Yeah, that I'm assuming particularly for the enterprise space, it's
Yep.
you can't even close the deals without that, right?
No, you can't.
Yeah.
You can't even have. I mean, you can't have a conversation with
They're not gonna
without it.
Yeah. You're not gonna be able to sit down with a decision maker at that point.
Yeah, but every time that comes up, right, we get even with our SOC 2 third party certification, we send them all the information. They'll come back to us and have another laundry list of security questions that they have profiled as key to them, and we'll have to answer them. So we have a security person on staff that just works with the salespeople and the clients, so that can, again, collapse the sales cycle a bit, and also just start making sure that we're addressing all those issues, because those are really important issues in what we do. Yep.
Yeah, really cool stuff. And to get to, we got probably about like 5-10 minutes left, and I wanted to, this is, I think, as we were discussing right at the beginning of our call before we hit record, the changing work environment accelerated through the pandemic. I'm curious to hear from you. As kind of the future of work is evolving, there's more kind of like gig contracting opportunities. It's becoming more common for people to hold more than one role, to have their kind of side consultancy hustles on, doing that. Tenure is obviously continuing to decline. The companies that are thriving are, I think, despite what's popular LinkedIn content, the companies that are thriving in this model know how to optimize onboarding and create turn employees and contractors into value creators faster. But all these shifts are occurring at, as you said, an accelerated pace. And I think a lot of the people playbooks that companies are running right now are ones that might have worked in 2010, and they're not necessarily adapting. So I'm curious to just get your thoughts on maybe how the conversations with your clients have evolved, how they're kind of like what they're valuing from your product has evolved, and how you see like your product being kind of like positioned in the future of work. Just big question. I know I asked like 3, but like however you want to kind of dive into that is cool with me. I don't, I'm just curious to get your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, obviously everyone sees the work environment changing, right? Everyone work from home, and then you're getting all these larger organizations demanding some in-house work, like getting back into the office. There's the big debate: have we been more productive or less productive over the time frame? I think we're going into a downturn with inflation and just everything else. And then you also have the gig workers, right? That's accelerated over time. The Ubers, the Instacarts, all these other companies. I really think that what's going to happen in the future is benefits are going to disengage themselves from the corporation, and they're going to be individualized and portable. That's what I believe. And now, will that happen in 5 years? I don't think so. But will it happen in 10 or 15? I do believe so. I believe it's very similar to what happened to the pension and 401k, where everyone used to have a pension and now they have a 401k. And the reason why that happened was because of what was going on with pensions and corporations and pension rating, that we needed to be able to have a retirement fund that was to you, not to the company, and so that you would have your own retirement fund that you could take with you and grow yourself. I think benefits are going to look the same way. Your point earlier about having a bucket of dollars and then being able to self-direct it, we think that is going to be the future. We think that there is going to be a bucket of money. Everybody gets $20,000 of benefits. 10 of it is for medical, with its tax structure and things like that. And so I think that benefits are gonna get more the portable nature and disengage themselves from the enterprise to some extent. And the enterprise doesn't want to manage this stuff, right? They really don't want to manage benefits.
Who does?
Who does?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And everyone's different.
Yeah.
Right. I may need healthcare from the company, but the next one down the line may be married and maybe on their wife's healthcare at another company, right? And they don't need it.
Yeah.
So, all these different things that come into a corporation that you need to be individualized. And I think that's where things are going in the future. And I think by doing that, you're kind of addressing both the gig and the W-2 with a platform of benefits that are the same and customizable.
I think so. And I think it's actually more equitable too. I mean, if
It is.
somebody, like if the healthcare plan is that it's like 50% of dependents and somebody has, 5 kids, and then there's somebody else that has, no kids, for instance, it's like, how is that equitable that, 10,000 plus, additional benefits are going to somebody that chose to have a large family. I think it does create, when you personalize, it creates more equitable. And I think the biggest gap has not been like, I think if a C-level were to hear this, and it was productized to an extent where they didn't have to have a large overhead staff managing personalization, like if they could just have a product and it's like done or like close to that,
Yep.
they just have to set it and leave it. I think most people would agree, oh, that's a great thing. The issue is when you have, a lot of other stuff going on or other priorities, it's like, okay, this is going to be like a massive overhaul. And this is going to require a ton of people, doing this. If to the extent that you could turn that into a product, I feel like kind of removes that blocker for companies to open that conversation and say, hey, like, let's, this is a good thing. Everybody wants this, like everybody would benefit from this, including ourselves. Like, let's do it. And maybe that's just why it hasn't been done sooner. I mean, is that fair to say, or what do you think?
It is fair to say. Yeah. I think the equitable thing is the biggest thing though, right? What you're giving to one employee, you're giving to another. And we see this happening all the time where you see, hey, we want student loan repayment, right? We're going to match student loan payments, because we have all these, we're trying to attract that generation. Okay. Well, the problem with that is you're giving $500 to this generation to pay down their student loan, but the generation like me that's 55 is sitting there going, wait a minute, I don't have student loans. Why don't I get the $500 to put in my 401k? I mean, it's just not fair. It also goes back to the whole family leave, and nothing against having family. I have 3 kids, but what if you decided you didn't want to have children?
Okay. Parental leave that's a tough one though.
And you sit there and go, okay, I just had a kid and now I get 12 weeks off for parental leave. And and I don't get 12 weeks off.
How do you do that? Okay, so that's the tough one, right? I feel like that's, I don't know.
And
Tell me if I'm, how do you resolve that in terms of like
well,
personalized benefits?
Here's how you resolve it. You resolve it by saying you get so much paid time off or paid leave, and you can accrue as much as you need. So instead of, in today's environment, you have this, companies will have a use it or lose it. So you get 3 weeks. If you don't use it, it's gone. They'll also have a cap, which is you can accrue up to 2 times your annual leave. Okay, so if that's 3 weeks, you get 6 weeks, and then it stops accruing. Okay, and the reason why these things exist, James, is because it's a liability sitting on the books. It's dollars. If I could say, hey, I just want to expense it off to a PTO bank that James owns, just like your 401k, it's not on my books anymore. I expensed it. It's sitting over there. When you want to use your PTO, you use it. Now, James, you can actually save up 6 weeks or however long you want, because you're going to have a kid and you want to be able to take that time off.
Mm-hmm.
And on the same end, back to that equity, I could use it however I want it.
Yeah. That's really interesting. I think I do agree with you. I think that this is something that more companies are going to probably gravitate toward. The easier it becomes for them to know that there's a product solution out there that can just make it a lot easier.
Yeah. Yep. But I think the equity thing is like, you just run into these pieces where you kind of go, okay, why are they getting $500 for student loan and I don't get anything? Why are they getting 12 weeks to take time off because they had a child, and I don't want to have a child, so I don't get it.
So
I have to pick up work.
Right. Yeah. And I hadn't even, to be honest, like I'll just say it. I had never thought about the parental leave part of that. Like I've thought about equitable benefits in other ways and the benefits of personalized benefits, but I never considered the parental leave part.
Yeah,
And that's a
I'm
big
not
one. That's a
I'm not
biggie.
saying that you do need to do that, right? You do need to, but I mean, like I said, I had 3 kids. My wife and I had to figure out how to make it all work. We didn't get 6 weeks or 12 weeks or whatever it is today. Wish I could, but then on the same end, if I could have done it, someone who didn't want to have kids should have that same 12 weeks available to them for a sabbatical, for, you know, all sorts of things.
Right.
Yep.
That's very well said. Very well said. Well, look, I think I like to end a little bit before that we come up right on the minute, because then it's kind of rushed. So I think this is like, this has been a really fun conversation. I've definitely learned a lot, and I think there's a lot of valuable takeaways for leaders that are listening to this. I don't know an HR people leader that hasn't received complaints about not having equitable or just evenly distributed kind of personalized benefits. This is something that, every organization where I've been involved with people teams, it consistently comes up. So I see like your product, your company. When I look at the vision of the future, like of people and talent, I do see your company very well positioned to thrive in that future. It just makes a lot of sense. So this has been really wonderful. I appreciate you joining me. And for those that want to like engage with you online, where can they find you? How can they engage with your company?
Yeah, they can find the company at ptoexchange.com. They can find me on LinkedIn and link in with me and message me if they want to learn more. You can also just email info@ptoexchange, and we can have a conversation. Send you some information if you're interested. And that's how you can get a hold of me.
All right, that sounds good. Well, hey, Rob, thank you. I appreciate you coming on and joining me today.
James, thank you for your time.
Yeah, for sure. All right, we'll talk to you soon.
Yep. Have a good one. Take care.
You too. Bye.